This video will discuss the role parents play in the lives of transgender children. Although parents play an important role in their children's lives regardless of age, we will focus on children of school age in order to remain consistent. In a transgender child's life, a supportive family can have a major impact on the success of their transition and the ultimate satisfaction with their life. For this reason, parents must be willing to take any steps necessary to provide that support and acceptance for their child. This support may come in the face of feelings of grief or loss from the parents, but for the health of the children, this grief must be overcome. Although there are many things a parent can and should do to help their child transition, I will focus on three main points. Accept the uncertainty of the situation, get connected to other parents and experts, and ultimately communicate with their child about their needs. Transgender youth faced many difficulties in school. Through the National Transgender Survey, it was found that more than half of trans students had been verbally harassed. 17% had to leave the school they had attended because of severe mistreatment. In all, the survey found that 77% of school-aged transgender children had experienced some form of mistreatment. While the statistics for harassment and mistreatment among trans adults are also staggeringly high, these numbers refer to children under the age of about 18. This means that they are having to deal with problems that no child should need to come across at such a young age. At a time when a child is learning to make friends and develop themselves, trans children are experiencing extremely high amounts of negativity. Since they are so young, it is very important that they have support at home in order to fight the negativity they receive at school. Familial support is shown to have a major impact in the lives of trans children. Unfortunately, not all transgender individuals have support from their families. In the same National Transgender Survey, 18% of respondents said that they had unsupportive families. That is nearly 1 in 5 individuals. 8% even said they had been kicked out of their own houses. In a world where transgenderism has not entirely been accepted due to its image as being atypical gender behavior, an individual who does not even have a safe house to come to is likely at high risk for additional trouble. By the survey, 40% of transgender individuals have attempted suicide at least once, while 39% had experienced psychological distress in the month before the survey. These numbers are shockingly high and could be the future for trans children. However, in looking at a graph of the difference between trans individuals with supportive families and without, one can see that the numbers are lower when there is family support. For example, while 54% of people with unsupportive families had attempted suicide, the number was around 37% for those with supportive families. While 37% is still unnecessarily high, any decrease in these numbers is very important. Familial support is correlated with a decrease in homelessness as well as psychological distress. With the high levels of mistreatment experienced by school-aged transgender children, it is very important for them to have supportive families in order to work to prevent the numbers discussed here. To further prove the importance of familial support, we can look at the reasons that the support makes a difference. As suggested by Erickson-Schroth, a child may recognize the distress of others and take self-sacrificing steps to decrease or eliminate that distress, even at their own expense. They may be scared enough to minimize the importance of their own needs. This suggests that the negativity surrounding a trans child can cause them to harm themselves in order to please those around them. It could be extremely detrimental for a child to hide their feelings or their identity in these situations, because it may allow for mental distress to build up without being seen. Children are often eager to please, so they could try to fight the discomfort they feel with their gender identity in order to avoid negative responses. Erickson-Schroth says that trans children will internalize the negative responses to their behavior and associate their identity with guilt or shame. If they fight their own identity, it could lead to the high levels of psychological distress that were previously discussed. As further proof, a study discussed by Zack showed that transgender children who were allowed to express their preferred gender showed about the same levels of depression and anxiety as classmates, in comparison with the considerably higher levels shown by trans individuals who were not given the same freedom to transition. Support of a child's transition can help them to express their preferred gender, which in turn can significantly decrease the likelihood of psychological distress. Since it is difficult to change the minds of the world as a whole, parents need to be ready to provide overwhelming support and acceptance for their child in order to encourage their gender expression and therefore support their health. In considering how a parent can best help their child, we must first address feelings of grief or loss that may arise from learning of the child's gender identity. Although this does mean temporarily turning the focus onto the needs of the parents rather than the child, and grief seems like an unreasonable response to the transition, grief is a common reaction, and understanding it will better the parent's ability to support their child. The feelings of grief can come from many places. As explained by Wahlig, transgenderism touches on fundamental aspects of identity with regard to gender and sexuality, and challenges one's notion of these concepts. This challenging of basic pieces of a person's identity can make a parent unsure of many other aspects of their child's identity. If an identity as major as gender is changing, parents may wonder if there are other aspects of their child that will change as well. In addition, part of a parent's identity will change with the identity of their child. One parent explains in an article by Mattson, "Never ever had it occurred to me how much I identified not just as being a mother, but as being a mother of a daughter. And so it was changing my identity too, to become the mother of a son. In this changing identity, parents may feel as though they are losing pieces of both themselves and their children. These feelings of loss will often result in feelings of grief for the pieces that will be lost. In addition, parents may fear the results of their child's transition. In looking at the statistics on mistreatment, discrimination, and psychological distress experienced by trans individuals, it is no wonder that the parents may be nervous about the dangers of transitioning. As a parent, your job is to protect your child and give them the best life possible. If the parents see the child's identity as something that may cause harm, they may feel grief over the idea that their child's life could have increased suffering. These ideas are supported by the media who, as explained by Trota, often portray trans individuals as victims. A parent who wants the best for their child may initially grieve the negativity they believe will come to their child. There is a specific type of loss associated with parents of trans children called ambiguous loss. This idea is discussed in depth in an article written by Jeni Wahlig. As a concept, ambiguous loss is where people are unclear about the absence or presence of a loved one. According to Wahlig, there are two sides to loss, physical and psychological. With ambiguous loss, one side is present while the other is absent. For example, when a loved one has gone missing, they are absent physically but assumed to be present psychologically because they are not known to be gone. In the case of someone with dementia, physically they are present but psychologically they are no longer around. This kind of loss leaves the person feeling confused and unsure of their feelings. Oftentimes, ambiguous loss is taken less seriously because the person is not clearly gone. For parents of trans children, Wahlig found in a study that the biggest tension was in the confusion over what was changing about their child and what was remaining the same. Specifically for these parents, there is a feeling that the child is physically both present in body and absent in presentation, and is psychologically present in personality but absent in gendered expression. Wahlig refers to this as dual ambiguous loss. Since the child is technically present in both senses, parents feel guilt that they have a sense of loss. This is because they often do not recognize the ways in which their child is legitimately absent. Wahlig says that it is important for parents to acknowledge these feelings of loss and work to relieve them. In order for the trans child to get the best possible support, the parent needs to be able to focus their energy on their child's well-being. Underlying feelings of grief may be picked up on by children, or they may manifest themselves later in the transition and cause problems. Wahlig explains that parents are better able to help their children when they themselves are receiving support. One of the best ways to do this is by acknowledging the ways in which the child is still present. This can help relieve the feeling that the idea of the child they know is gone. Because we know that familial support has a major impact on the well-being of a trans child, it is important to look at the ways in which a parent can best support their child. The first thing to do as a parent is accept the uncertainty of the situation. As addressed, parents may feel a sense of loss as their child explores their gender. This loss comes from the changes being unclear and creating a feeling that the parent is losing their child. Ultimately, Wahlig says, the end goal from an ambiguous loss perspective is not a complete resolution of the loss, but rather a greater ability to tolerate the ambiguity. Acknowledging the feelings of grief can help a parent come to terms with the uncertainty. Parents often have a strong desire to know where their child will end up. Knowing the final path makes it easier to deal with the changes and struggles that arise throughout the transition. However, there is not a clear path with a child's gender identity. Each child is different, and as Erickson-Schroth says, there is no right answer for every situation. Gender nonconforming children, like all children, are unique and their needs are different. She emphasizes that the best a parent can do is to create a positive, loving, accepting environment for their child. Other than that, the path is dependent on the child, and parents need to come to terms with this. The next step for parents is to get connected. According to Erickson-Schroth, there are groups available for parents of trans children. These groups allow for parents to share their experiences and give advice to other parents. This can also help parents cope with the uncertainty by seeing other parents who have managed to navigate their own children's paths. Parents in the text gave testimony on the positive effects of these groups. It can be lonely and isolating to face these issues on our own, but many people make wonderful connections that enhance their ability to be the best caretakers possible. In addition, the author emphasizes the importance of connecting with medical providers. The provider can be an important source for resources when the family is having trouble with some aspect of the transition. They can also make the process of obtaining hormones and medical intervention easier because they can advocate for the family. Counselors can be a useful resource for parents in dealing with the feelings of grief, as well as for the children as they navigate their lives during the transition. Parents are not expected to know how to handle every aspect of the situation. Every child is different, and there are a lot of new hurdles to face. However, in order to best support their children, parents must find resources and other people to help both them and their children. Ultimately, the most important thing a parent must do is listen to their child and keep open communication. Most parents would agree that they want their child to be happy, healthy, and safe. Transgender children face a particularly large number of obstacles in their transitions that can keep them from happiness and safety, so support from their families is essential. Because each child's experiences are different, parents need to have an open communication with their children in order to assure that they are helping their child. This communication shows the child that their parent is genuinely interested in supporting their transition and helping in any way they can, which can fight any isolation the child may feel. In addition, Erickson-Schroth points out that this communication allows the parent to evaluate the health of their child and watch for any sign that they need additional help. Communicating with the child is the best thing a parent can do to show their support and keep an eye on the health of their child. To conclude, parents and family have a major effect on the health and happiness of a transgender child. Support can decrease the likelihood of mental distress and help the child to accept themselves and become comfortable in their gender identity. This support needs to come even in the face of struggles that a parent may be facing in terms of grief. There are many things a parent can and should do to support their child, but the most important thing a parent must do is communicate with their child. The child's health is the primary focus, and there's no one who can report on this better than the child themselves.